right, here we go. All right. Let's jump into this conversation. If you are somebody who's ever struggled with being burnt out, man, just like, bro, I'm good. Like, I'm good. If you're a musician that plays for, like, let's say your local church or a local something other, but most of you guys that know my platform, I talk to a lot of church musicians, musicians who serve in ministry in some form of fashion. And if you ever been at that place where you've been burnt out, then this is the video for you. And as a bonus, if you hang around all the way to the end of this video, I'm going to show you that little groove that I was just playing, those chords. I'll show you what I was doing at the end of this video. So make sure you hang around all the way to the end. So let's jump right into it. So I've seen that this has been a topic for years. It goes and comes. It's kind of like the weather, one of them things. It never fails. Almost every year I'll get an email or two or three or a comment on a video or something like that. Like, man, what do you do to get over just burnout, just being burnt out, being over it, that whole feeling? And I'm somebody that's been very acquainted with that feeling, and I know what it feels like to be burnt out and just feel like, bro, I ain't got no more to give, or even in your church situation where you feel like you've given and you've given and you've given. A lot of times, I think the biggest culprit of that is the reciprocity factor. We don't feel like we're getting back what we're giving out. And of course, that's going to obviously cause burnout. Or it could be somebody who, you don't necessarily play for a church. You've been at this thing and at this thing and at this thing, and you become discouraged. And just the idea of just continuing to go and go and go, and you don't see the return on the investment of time that you've put in on trying to practice and trying to grow this instrument, it can cause burnout. So, all right, we got the diagnosis. So what do we do with this? What do we do with this idea, this feeling of being burnout, overwhelmed, like, bro, I'm done. One more thing, I'm going to throw this bass in the garbage. That feeling, what do we do with this? Well, I will say, and I hope this video is really short outside of me teaching y'all these chords and everything, but I would encourage you guys, first things first, get back to original intent. I think as we grow as musicians, as we progress in our careers, for some of us, or as we begin to get past that initial hurdle, whatever it was, when we started playing, once the problems started rising, we started getting bored with stuff. And, we start, as you become a gigging musician, you get over the fact that initial excitement about being able to play the instrument and just being able to play a song. Over time, you get over that, and then, the regular politics or the regular hoopla that comes with being a musician, it starts to kick in. So oftentimes, these things come up, these things happen, and they make you start questioning a lot of stuff. They make you start looking at things and start looking at people sideways, especially if you found yourself in one of those situations where people seem like they're, they want to use you, but it's like almost it turns from a thing where you're serving to it's a negative sense of the word that, nah, we literally want to use you. And you get to the point where you get burnt out with rehearsals, burnt out with learning songs, burnt out with the whole nine. I think, number one, you got to this would be number two, get back to original intent. What did you start doing this for? What did you pick up this instrument for? I was talking with my wife the other day. I was telling her, I said, babe, when I first started, doing music and really getting serious about recording and that type of thing, I had no ambition of getting on anybody's record or anything. I could care less. I really didn't know it was a thing. I knew I was producing music, but, to show you the area I lived in, a very rural area in Mississippi. And at that time, we didn't know a lot of people who were doing big things. At least I didn't, where I was. I didn't know a lot of people who were doing big things in music when I was growing up. So my ambition was just to get the music out of my head and get it recorded. Get it on wax, as the old school said. Put it on wax, get it recorded. And I would sit out there for hours when I lived with my parents. I would literally stay out. I had a little building that I bought from Lowe's. I bought one of those little sheds. I called myself making that into a studio, and I literally would stay out there for hours just creating music, creating music, creating music. I did before I got that building. I would go to my home church. They had a 4-track recorder, and I think it was a Tascam, a little 4-track tape recorder, and that was the first time I got to hear myself record multiple instruments. So I would play the drums, I would jump on the bass and overdub, jump on the keys and overdub, jump on the guitar, and man, that blew my mind, the idea of being able to record all this music. But like everything else, it got old after a while. But I noticed, going back to my initial thing, getting back to original intent, I noticed that it didn't get old. Um, it didn't get old until I got into the industry, until I was trying to get into the industry. Because what I noticed as I started trying to get into the industry, the way that I was creating music started to change. Where I would just get an idea and just run with it, and like wherever the idea lands at, that's where it landed. But when I got to the point where I was trying to get stuff placed, I moved to Atlanta. I'm trying to get songs placed on records and that kind of thing. And I know there was a certain formula, and I was trying to follow that formula. I had a few mentors, and I'm listening to them and listening to their music. So my music and the way I created music started to shift. And I got more away from who I genuinely was in terms of the way I created, the way I played. And I was going for this, I don't want to say cookie cutter because I don't want to insult anybody. I was going for this thing that was industry standard, so to speak. That's a way to better say it. So I was going for this industry standard sound. And as I went for that over the years, and the disappointment of, you'll submit, this is how it worked. I've had records submitted and things like that over the years, but this is how it worked oftentimes. You may submit 20 records and only land one. Depending on who you are, depending on your connections, that ratio may be either higher or lower. But you may, for every 20 songs or something that you submit, you may only land one. For some people, it's 30. Some people, it's 50. It's a lot of songs. It's a lot of music. So if you're already a person like me that dealt with rejection, you do this over and over and constantly hear no and hear no and hear no. That weighs down at your self-worth, your self-confidence if you're not careful. All right, so let's bring it back to bass world, because I'm talking producer talk. So as a bass player, you're playing and you're working on all of this stuff, and you're not getting called for the gigs. Nobody's calling you, right? You're seeing other people maybe at your church. You're seeing other musicians come through. You're seeing the way that they're celebrating this cat. They're talking about that cat. But for you, it's like you really don't get anything. Maybe you're the person that doesn't get anything. You never hear anything. Not a good job, man, blah, blah, blah. You don't hear any of that. And so whatever your scenario is, because we could be here all day with scenarios, you fill in the blank. But it causes you to start looking for the approval and the praise of a man, and then you forget why you really started doing it. Just in case you're somebody who never got to this intent, make God the intent of why you do what you do. Especially if you're somebody who call yourself a believer, play for an audience of one. What is it? Colossians 3:23. Work heartily as for the Lord rather than for men. Do what you do as if you're doing it to please an audience of one, as if God himself is listening to every note that you're playing. And so when you know that you've given your all, when you know that you put everything into what you've given, you can walk away feeling like, man, you know what? I know God was pleased with that because I know the intent of my heart was right behind that. So the same thing. The second part of that is like you've walked away from the original intent, what you were trying to do initially in terms of why you got into it, why you started playing an instrument, whether it was a genuine love for music. Get back to that genuine love for music. Get back to that. The second thing, you want to start getting back to things that initially inspired you. I oftentimes find myself days where I can't be as creative. These days I'm more busy. And that's another thing. When you get busy, it can take away. You're just tired. and you don't have the time to really dig in. You're burnt out from just doing so much. Not so much you're not getting a pat on the back or this, that, and the other. It's just you're just tired. You have a lot going on, especially as grown folk. If you're a teenager, maybe this doesn't apply to you. But if you're grown, and you're taking care of business, you have a family, you have a job, you have a business, whatever the case may be, then you could just be exhausted and you just need rest, right? But something that I found helpful for me is even listening, even if I'm not putting my hands on the bass, listening to music that initially inspired me. Like for me, it's a lot of, I could go back and listen to Victor Wooten, listen to Jocko, listen to, these are like people in terms of solo bass. Whoever your people are, those are your people. But like Yellow Jackets and stuff, you go back and hear that stuff, and it wakes up something in you like, man, I want to learn that. Like, challenge yourself to do something different. Challenge yourself to go and transcribe a song. There's a Yellow Jackets song I did. I transcribed it like, man, it had to be almost 10 years ago now. But I was working on that song, and the challenge of working through that sense of like gratification that I got for myself, not because I was trying to get on anybody's record, not because I was trying to play for anybody's church or anything like that, but just to know I was pushing myself and hearing the progress that I made. Sometimes you have kept yourself at a level too long, right? So you've been at this level so long that you've gotten bored. So even when you're doing things that are cool, you don't realize how cool they are because you've kept yourself at this level. But if you push yourself to do something that's way out of your comfort zone, that's literally going back to the stuff that inspired you when you listen, and then you push yourself to start learning that stuff. Just say, these are songs you learned years ago, and like, man, I know the song, I know how to play this, but do you know how to play it? If there's a sax part, do you know how to play the sax part? If the vocal is playing something super dope, do you know how to go back and play what the vocalist was doing, right? For you producers out there, something that I would do years ago, if you look it up, there's a cover I did of A Different World. Like, that's something I grew up hearing when I was a kid. It was what was it? It's A Different World, but it was the Aretha Franklin version of A Different World. And I always liked that when I was a kid. So just for fun, again, getting back to things that initially inspired you, just for fun, I went and recorded that and just did a cover to it. I mean, it was just literally, I did it for fun because I always I'm a soulful dude. So when Aretha sung that song, it was so soulful. I'm like, man, I could hear all this stuff. Granted, I didn't go all the way out with it, but it was subtle, and I just wanted to do a cover, but it was just something for fun. So that's another thing that you can do to get out of that funk. Just do something for the fun of it. Don't worry about if anybody else likes it. If you want to post it to socials, do that, but do something for the fun of it. And again, I want to keep circling back around, and man, let whatever you do, let it be to please God. And and the other thing is, don't be so caught up in how bad you think you sound. And to phrase this a little bit better, be aware of your self-talk. I talk to people sometimes and I hear just by default how negatively they speak about themselves. Maybe you're not that person. Maybe you're the complete polar opposite where you speak very well of yourself. But I do know people who tear themselves down, who say negative comments about themselves, like, man, I suck and all this kind of stuff. I call it sometimes false humility, especially when a person know they can play and then be saying stuff like, oh man, I suck, man. I used to do that stuff. But you have to be aware of these types of things that you say to yourself. Even if you're not saying something along the lines of I suck, be aware of your conversation. More importantly, be aware of your inner conversation, because your inner conversation affects the way you think. That ultimately affects the way that you feel, because you're the only person that hears every single thing that you say every time you say it. And when you don't keep your word to yourself, man, I'm going to do this, I'm going to work on that, you begin to tear yourself down internally because you're not keeping your word to yourself. You wouldn't think that would be a big deal, but you would be surprised when you dig a little deeper subconsciously, the fact that you don't keep your word to yourself, like if you said, man, I'm going to be here by this time, or I'm going to be working on this, I'm going to be doing it, and you didn't keep your commitment to what you said you were going to do, you start losing hope and losing faith in your own self and your own ability to execute what you said you were going to do. And that internally can cause internal depression. So, and granted, I'm not talking depression on this one, because that's a whole subject in and of itself that we're not going to get in today, because that's too heavy to get into today. But I'm just giving you some practical things you can do if you find yourself in a funk. So these are literally just some practical things that you can do to get yourself out of the funk. If there are some other things that you guys have been dealing with, drop them in the comments. I'd love to kind of expound upon some more of these things. I'm not the expert on all of this stuff, but I know what I've been through myself, and I know some things that have helped me to kind of get myself out of that area. So I'm interested to hear what are some of the things that you struggle with and how you've overcome these things. I don't want the chat to turn into just everybody just dumping with no solutions, right? If you are a person that's looking for solutions, however, do drop that in the comments. And if we need to talk, if I need to, get on an email with you, depending on what the comment is, we might jump on that, because I'd love to, if you're in that low place, I'd love to be able to, if I can, speak to that. There's a lot of y'all and just one of me, but if I can, to speak to that. But if you are somebody who's out there and you've dealt with that low, just feeling burnt out, and you've gotten out of it, share in the comments what you did, what that looked like for you. All right, so that's pretty much it for the most part. One last thing I want to mention. It's now October, towards the end of this month. We're getting ready to go into November. But if any of you guys are close to the Mississippi area, if you follow me on Facebook or Instagram, you'll see something about this really, really soon. But I'm going to be doing something I do I've been doing it every single year for a while. We took a break off around COVID time. But it's something called Shared for Cause. We're going to be doing Shared for Cause this year. It's in Tupelo, Mississippi. Again, follow me on Facebook and all that stuff. I'll be putting flyers up with all the information, where to be. Basically, we just get together and jam as musicians. That's basically all it is. The intent of this years ago when I started doing it was the musicians giving back to the community as well as being empowered themselves. So we would come out, share and shed knowledge as well as playing, having a good time, but we would also bring canned foods and all these different things like money, and we would find different families and stuff like that, sponsor them, where it would be homeless people. I think we sponsored a homeless group last year when all of us came together and we did it. But this particular year, we're not doing any of that. The focus this year is on musicians, mental and spiritual health, because I noticed that there are a lot of musicians. I see the posts and stuff on Facebook and that kind of thing about musicians dealing with, being depressed, just mental health. And so we're going to deal with that this year at Share for a Cause. So I invite you guys to come out, Tupelo, Mississippi. If you're near the surrounding areas, I had people to come out as far as Alabama, Memphis, Georgia. I've had people to come from all these different places to come, and it's usually the night before Thanksgiving Eve, or that Wednesday night before Thanksgiving is usually when we do it. So if you are in the area or near the area, make plans to show up for Share for a Cause. All right, so I'm going to show y'all these chords that we did. So what I was doing there, jumping right into this because I don't want to have this video be too long, but I promise you that I will show you this. So I was in the key of G, and so we were doing 4 to 6 to 2 to 3 back to 4. All of these are triads, just 3-note chords. So I'm going, it's like a major 7 chord. So we got, right, C major 7 to E minor. Then we go into the 2. So I'm just going, and then we're going to the 3. Now that's a big stretch. A lot of people might not be able to get that stretch, but I'm playing that 3. Right? going back to that. And I do that twice, but the second time on that 3 chord, I'll play. So that's another way you can play that 3 chord. We're going like, instead of going like we did that 2, we're going. So I'm going, but I move that. And so for me, I'll use that ring finger. And so and I'm also muting to give that, I'm doing palm muting to give that low. So I'm sliding into that 4. Right? So that's what I'm doing. I'm palm muting over here. So I'm using these 3 fingers. So slow. That's another way you can do it. And the more you break the chords up, the better it sounds. So the more you can break that. And so there I just went down an octave. And you can substitute that for the 6th chord of that E. The same thing we did over that 3. We can do the same thing over that E. So it'll be something that like be a dope, just in between groove you want to play. Some of y'all can use it for your offering or just something that the bass player can kick off so you ain't just stuck just. Ain't nothing wrong with that, but if you want something different that's a little bit more melodic, feels a little bit more prettier, you can do that. And so going back and forth in between those octaves, it adds a little different flavor to it. That's just something that you can use to play around with. And hopefully just that little thing there will break you up out of that funk that you've been stuck in. So hopefully this video has been helpful for you guys. And if you found it helpful, be sure to let me know in the comments. I'm going to be bringing more and more content to you guys just like this. And I appreciate you for hanging out with me. Let somebody know about this channel if you're finding this stuff helpful. It's going to help me in this algorithm with YouTube land. So thank y'all, and I appreciate you. Hit that subscribe button and turn on my notifications if you haven't already done it. If you want more in-depth lessons like this, but a little bit more hands-on where I'm breaking stuff down, not necessarily talking, but breaking these things down, you can check more of this content out at jermainemorgan.net. I will see you guys over there. All right, thank y'all. I'm out. Peace.